Welcome everybody to our March meeting, Garland County Historical Society. We were all here together, and it's so great to see you again this month. Ron Fuller, former Major of the U.S. Army, is going to lead us now in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. If you please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You did very well.
Thank you, Ron. Each of you received the minutes. Have you read them? Okay. Do we have Tom Branch?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Thank you. We have a second. Thank you. Okay. The minutes will now be, everybody approved? Say aye. Aye. We'll accept the minutes as read and approved. Thank you very much. Now, I want to tell you some exciting news. Liz was in Arkadelphia last week at Lake DeGray at a conference with the Arkansas Historical Association. And she and we received an award, the Walter L. Brown Award for Best County or Local Journal. Our Liz is our editor, and she worked so hard on the record. Thank you so much for all your hard work, and for Donovan too for designing it, and all the articles, because all of you all make our book so successful. Thank you so much. And now, one of the articles received the Best Article Award, and that was the fourth article in the record, and it was written by Dr. Christopher Thrasher and Guy Lancaster.
Yay.
Okay. Liz, would you like to come up now, please? Thank you so much.
I have a few announcements before our wonderful speaker. Today, we're happy to welcome members of the board of the Friends of Hot Springs National Park, which I'm sure you know is a wonderful nonprofit organization that helps people learn about the park and does all kinds of fun things. They have a table set up at the back of the room, and you can visit with them and learn more about being a member or maybe volunteering or what the organization does. And I think you would enjoy very much learning about that organization and getting involved. Wednesday, May 3rd is Local Author Day here at the library. 11 to 12:30 is the local author meet and greet in the main library, where they scatter the authors out in different places in the library. And you can visit with our own author, Mike Blythe, the author of our very popular book, Hot Springs Then and Now. You'll have that book here to sign for people and some of our other publications. And at 1 o'clock that day, here in this room, there's an author panel where each of the local authors will talk briefly. Now, May 16th, I'm giving you a lot of dates. I should see people taking notes. Our next monthly meeting, the third Tuesday of May here, we invite you to a program about the legacy of Dallas Bump. How many people have heard of Dallas Bump? Good. How many people have a Dallas Bump chair? Yes. In case you haven't heard, he was a fourth generation chairmaker who constructed handcrafted furniture for more than 75 years. His work was been featured in Southern Living, on TV programs, was lauded by the Smithsonian Institution, and in 2013, he was named an Arkansas Living Treasure by the Arkansas Arts Council. So in our May program, our friend John Archibald will tell about Bear, Arkansas, where Dallas lived and worked for over 90 years. And he'll give that context and that background. We'll share a short video about Dallas that highlights his unique work. And we'll hear from his nephew and his nephew's wife, Leon and Donna Sutton, who are continuing the Bump legacy today. So that's going to be very interesting, and we hope y'all will come. Now today, we're welcoming a lady who was born in Hot Springs, Lisa Goodwin. She graduated from Lakeside in 1976 and then got a BSc from Washita Baptist University and an MSc from Henderson. She worked for the Arkansas Department of Parks and Tourism for several years, as well as the Hot Springs Ad and Promotion Commission. And she taught middle school in Alabama and Arkansas for 25 years. She gets a medal for that. And then she moved back to the Hot Springs area in 2013. And she lives in Hot Springs Village with Bill. There's Bill back there, her husband of 28 years. We are just delighted to have her here today to tell about her absolutely unique childhood growing up at the Majestic. Please welcome a lovely lady, Lisa Wolfe.
I'm so honored that they asked me to do this. I'm going to start with some I think some of these are postcards and photographs that came from Ron Fuller. Where's Ron? Thank you so much. Because these really help introduce, the Majestic, the unique history and heritage there. As you can tell, this was older. This was before the other two buildings were added. And I'm going to talk about all four buildings. But this is, of course, the Central Park in Whittington Junction. Hopefully all of you know where the Majestic was. It was right there at Central and Park and Whittington and really quite the focal point for many people visiting Hot Springs. I wanted to show you this one because some of you may even remember the old Majestic Hotel garage. It was still there when I was a child, but I think it was torn down. And then now you see that, if you drive by there, you see that great big huge parking lot. Of course, the hotel is gone, but that was parking for the garage for the hotel. The Cedar Park apartment and cottages, if you look above there, at one time on Cedar Street, there were a number of these cottages, and they were duplexes, and people would stay in them, and some of them lived in them. There were apartments in the hotel as well, but there were a number of those duplexes. And when my parents and my brothers came, my dad had worked for Southwest Hotels for many, many years. And so when my parents came with my brothers in 1954, they were living in one of these duplexes, and it was just a 2-bedroom, 1 bath upstairs, and it had a living area and a small kitchen downstairs. And then when they found out that I was going to be coming along, they realized they were going to need more room. So they took one of those duplexes and they did some renovation, and I grew up in basically a 4-bedroom house with 2 bathrooms, and then we had lots of space downstairs. But that's where I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of background on that. So I'm going to start with pictures of me there in the Majestic. I lived quite the charmed childhood, and this was me. You can see I've got my little doll with me. Did we all of us girls carried our dolls with us, didn't we? And obviously there was going to be a party, and in fact I've shown this slide many times, and I called it Party Time at the Majestic because there were lots of different activities and parties. That was my mother on the left, and the lady on the right was a lady named Mary Louise Morgan, and she was the social director for the hotel, and she kept all the activities going. Just much loved, and I used to spend a lot of time with her. She lived there in the hotel in one of the apartments. This was Christmas time. In the pool area of the hotel, they had the reindeer, and they would be moving all the time. And of course, Santa was, you can't see Santa, but he was behind there in his sleigh. And we ate pretty much all of our meals, not so much breakfast, but pretty much all of our meals at the hotel. I will show you in a few minutes basically where our house was in relationship to the hotel, but it was right behind the Lanai Suites, those of you that remember the Lanai Suites. So it was right behind there. All I had to do was walk across the parking lot. And all any of us had to do was walk across the parking lot, and we were there at the hotel. So we, pretty much ate all of our meals there. And I'm sure this was one evening after we had had dinner, and I, wanted to stop and look at the reindeer. And my dad took my mother and mine's picture out there at the pool area where they had the big tree. This was, like I said, we lived in a house. By the time I came along, it was a 4-bedroom because I had 2 brothers, and we each had our own room. And this must have been, I'm assuming, Easter. That's what it looks like. So I was there in front of the house. Unlike most of the children my age, I got to have my birthday parties at the Majestic Hotel pool. I have a summer birthday, and we, all my friends would be invited, of course. And this was pretty much my, the small group of friends. We were all fairly young at the time. I don't know, probably 6 years old, maybe 7. But, I've got a couple of cousins in there, and then the rest of them were some of the girls that I went to school with back then. So, or maybe lived in our neighborhood. But yes, I always noticed that in the summer, I seem to have more friends than I do. I never figured that out, but that's kind of how it was. So, but everybody loved coming to my birthday parties because we would have our ice cream and cake in the terrace room, which later on became, Ron probably could remember what it was called because your mother sang there.
It was called the terrace room.
Was it still called the terrace
It was a
room?
piano bar.
Yeah, it was. They made it into a piano bar later, but when I was
They
growing
called
up,
it the terrace
it
room.
was just where they had special events and parties. And of course, I always had my ice cream and cake at my party, and that's where I would open my presents, and then we would all go out swimming. This is me a little bit older. That is my dad, and you can see he's watering. My mother grew roses on the side of the house. I'm sure she had him out there watering roses. But you can see the Lanai Suites in the background. I just love the Lanai Suites. They were the same age as me. They were opened in 1958, which was the year I was born. So I thought they were just the best. Now, just like my brothers, I got a job working at the Majestic. And this is a silly picture, but I wanted to show you because can you see the switchboard?
Yeah.
It was one of those old-timey switchboards that you would plug in and you would answer, and then when somebody if they were staying in a room and they wanted to call somebody else in a different room, it's not like today. Well, today we all have cell phones, we don't need that, but. They would have to call down and I would have to connect them. If they wanted to make a reservation during the races, we were very, very busy. And they would call and want to make a reservation at Hamilton House or Mrs. Miller's or, any of the really nice restaurants out in town. Seven Hills, I remember. I knew all those phone numbers because I had to rotary dial those numbers. And then as soon as someone answered at the restaurant, I would hang up and of course they would make their reservation. That was my first job. And the lady back behind me, her name was Frida Henson, and she was the one that trained me on the switchboard. And she worked at that hotel for years and years and years. And there was another lady named Jessie, but I cannot remember her last name. This was a little bit later. This was, I think I was probably in college when this picture was made. We were there in the dining room. It looked a little different when I was growing up, but this was in the dining room. Obviously, we were sitting down to a meal. My oldest brother is not in this picture, but there's my mom and dad and my brother Gary, who Ron knew, I think, growing up. So, And then this one, my parents had moved back after, when I was in high school, we moved out to Cedarwood subdivision. My mother got concerned about my dad because we were there at the hotel. We lived right there. And he was over there, morning, noon, and night, and she was a little worried about the stress level. So, and she wanted him to be able to get away from the hotel and go play a little golf, and he wouldn't do that as long as we were living there because he just loved that hotel and it was kind of his life. So we had moved out to Cedarwood subdivision, had a little house out there with my last 2 years of high school. And sometime while I was in college, I really don't know why they moved back. I had, my mother, while we were living at the hotel, she didn't have to cook much. So, and she didn't have to clean either. So, I don't know, maybe she talked my dad into moving down, I don't know. But they moved back to the hotel and they lived in what had been Mrs. Manning's apartment. Mrs. Manning, the Manning family, some of you may have heard of Grady Manning. He was the founder of Southwest Hotels. And she had lived there at the hotel. So that apartment had just been one that people could rent, but could stay in while they were staying in Majestic. But my parents lived there, and so the whole time I was in college, when I would come home, or most of the time when I was in college, when I was come home, that's where they would live. And then my dad retired in 1982. This picture, I'm pretty sure, was our last Christmas there. So that's my brother Roger and myself, and then my dad and my mom, Leo and Polly Wolfe, and then my brother Gary. So we come together for one last picture at the Majestic. Okay, so I've always had people say, "Did you have celebrities that stayed there?" And of course, yes, we did have lots of. We had lots of the people that would perform at the Vapors. Bob Lilly did not stay there, but his buddy did, and I found this in some of my dad's memorabilia. He had, how many of you remember Bob Lilly that played for the Dallas Cowboys? Yeah. Well, my dad must have told his buddy that we were big Dallas Cowboy fans. So Bob Lilly sent him a picture. Anybody know who this is?
Oh, that's
Irene.
Yes, very good. Yes, that is Irene Ryan. That's what she really looked like without all the makeup. And some of you may have seen, there's a kind of a famous picture in Hot Springs that goes around of my dad with 3 of the Beverly Hillbillies. And I'll get to that in just a minute. There's Randy. This was, she autographed the picture, and I remember this was in kind of a bulletin board area outside the dining room for a long, long time. People would stop and say, "There's Randy." And this is kind of funny, but in later years, or more recent years, we have a grandson that has discovered the Beverly Hillbillies, and he thinks that's the funniest show he has ever seen. He just loves to watch old reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies. He's 17 now, when he was a little bit younger. And so, of course, his Bob had to tell him that, well, Lisa's dad met them and has his picture made with them. Really? So, and this is my autographed picture of Donna Douglas, of course, who was Ellie Mae. And we also found out fairly recently, I would say in the last 5 or 10 years, that she was in school, in high school with one of my husband's friends. She grew up in Baton Rouge. And there's a picture that some of you have probably seen before. It seems like it's on the Garland County Historical Society site, but Remembering Hot Springs, History of Hot Springs. And there's, of course, Ellie Mae and Max Bayer, and then, of course, Irene Ryan. And they were, I've heard different stories. I think they were in Little Rock for an event, the state fair, but then they wound up coming to Hot Springs and doing some touring. So, and then, do any of you all remember George Gray?
Yes.
He had an orchestra, and they would play at the Majestic. There were 4 buildings, as you may remember, and I'll get to those in just a minute. But he and his orchestra would play a couple times a week down in what was called the North Lobby. It was the lobby of the original building. So that had been the original lobby when the Majestic was built. And they would play and people would, the guests just loved it, especially some of our older guests. They would love to go down there and play, and dance to all of that music. This picture was taken in the dining room. And he would play the organ in there. And when we would go in there to sit and eat, it quite honestly was not my favorite place. You know why? They didn't have hamburgers. My parents loved to go to the H. Grady Manning dining room because it was elegant and you had that wonderful menu where you would order your appetizer or, maybe a salad, and then you would go on down and you would order your main course, and then you would order your vegetables, side dishes to go with that, and maybe some dessert. Well, that was, to a 7, 8, 9, 10, 12-year-old, that was kind of fancy. And I would just much rather go down to the Dutch Street and get myself a cheeseburger and some French fries. But he was playing the organ in there every time we went in. And, some of that music was fine, but it was kind of old-timey to me. And that when one of the songs that he would play that I really liked was Georgie Girl. Does anybody remember that? And I think it was because it was lively and upbeat. And so when he saw me come in, we knew that the next song was going to be Georgie Girl. And that always made me happy. I was just telling Liz that I wish I had more pictures of the Majestic Lodge. Some of you may remember when the Majestic Lodge was out there, and it was, of course, owned by the hotel. And during the summer, once a week, there would be lodge parties out there, and the guests could pay extra, and they could go out there, and there was a smokehouse, and they would have smoked meat, and they had just wonderful, wonderful barbecue. And I think there would be bingo and just all kinds of activities. But that area was really pretty. It was right on Lake Hamilton. And occasionally, my mother would talk my dad into taking a break from the hotel, and she'd say, "You take Lisa out to the lodge and take her fishing." So this was one of those times. We would go out there, and they had some of you may remember the old time cane poles, and that's what we would use. And occasionally I'd even catch a fish. So that was, I'm married to a fisherman. He loves to fish, and we love to fish together. But I tell him all the time, I said, this is where I got my start, was at the Majestic Lodge. And they had that floating dock, and people, the visitors out there used to love to go and sit there and just look at the lake. Okay, so this is, and you all will recognize this if you were ever, up high at the Majestic and look down the pool area. I need to tell you that these pictures that I'm about to show you were taken by a lady that worked at the Arlington. I do not know her name, and it upsets me because I want to be able to give her credit. When we had my brother Gary's memorial service, my oldest brother Roger met her, and I think she worked in Mr. Fisher's office, but she loved the Majestic, and she had gone down the day that it closed and had taken a lot of pictures. And she said we could have them, we could use them, but I'm hoping that someday somebody's going to say, I know who that was, and I'm going to have her name, and I'll be able to give her the proper credit that she deserves, because the pictures are absolutely wonderful. This, of course, is the pool area, and this is where I spent my childhood, especially in the summer. I think I got up early in the morning, I went to the pool, and I was there all day long. And now I go to the dermatologist on a regular basis. But it was a great place to grow up. I learned how to swim at an early age. My mother used to laugh and say, I think you could swim before you could walk. But because we just spent lots of time in the pool, or I did especially. My dad, of course, was the manager. Occasionally he would go to the pool, and he would make himself relax a little bit. We did have a little baby pool, and we had the fountain. I've got a little better picture of that to show you later. But this is the picture I wanted to show you where our house was. If you can see where the little arrow is, the pointer, that was where I grew up. And there was a parking lot and right there, and we would just walk across that parking lot and walk in through that breezeway, and there we were. So, you know, there are a lot of people think that I grew up in an apartment in the hotel. When I grew up in a house that was owned by the hotel, that was on hotel property. So in all my waking minutes, it seemed like if I wasn't at school, we're in that hotel. We also had some gardens up in the back. If you look real close, you can see the swing set that I used to swing on. There, it was back behind the Lanai Suites, and they were terraced gardens. And there was also a nice park. There was a swing set, and there were shuffleboard courts. And when I was probably in about 5th or 6th grade, I talked my dad into putting in a tetherball court because that's what we played at school. So I wanted a tetherball up there, and they did. They put one in. Like I said, I was kind of a pampered pet around that hotel. They also had a really wonderful greenhouse up there. And my mother that was her hobby. She loved to garden. She loved to grow things. And she pretty much took care of that. They had a gardener that was hired by the hotel, but she was, the pool area, people used to say the Majestic pool area was the prettiest in town. And I think a lot of that was because of all the flowers that were out there. They really kept it pretty back then when I was growing up. And she loved that. And I had some friends that would say, why is your mother going around picking at those flowers? And I told my husband that later on, he said she was deadheading. That's what she was doing. She knew what she was doing. But they said, why is she picking at those flowers? I said, I don't know. I didn't know anything about plants. But that was kind of her thing. But she spent a lot of time up there in that greenhouse. And of course, I would go, and my friends, that was one thing that my friends loved to do. They would come over to my house, and we would go have our own little private playground up there, it seemed like. Because, you know, they would have, the guests from the hotel, if they knew about it and got their kids up there, they would go play at the playground. But some of them, you know, couldn't stay out of the pool long enough, I guess. But that's where our house was. And so that's where I grew up until I was about 16 years old. This was the baby pool, and you can tell this was the day that the hotel was shutting down, so they didn't have the fountain running. But they had a fountain there, and it was a really popular place for people to have their picture made. And if I would look through all of my pictures, I could probably find some there, but it could be that I have some that were made there with my boyfriend that summer. Because, you know, I would make friends with all kinds of kids from out of town. And in fact, I'm still in touch with some of those, but not the boys. Just some of my girlfriends that I've met over the years. But yeah, it was kind of neat because, you know, the families would come, they would stay a week, and I might have a boyfriend that week, and next week I might have another. But, again, it's a great place to grow up. But you know, that was a popular place for having pictures made. It was in front of that pretty fountain. And at nighttime, out at the pool, because I would be out there at night a lot too, hanging out with my new friends that summer. And you would hear the frogs and the crickets, and it was just so serene. It was, I mean, you know, we're in town, but it kind of felt like you were in the country in a way. So, you know, there's the Lanai Suites. Of course, this was the terrace room. This was where I would have my birthday parties and other kind of parties, whatever was going on. That is what we call the sundry store. And they had, you can see the cute little tables and the chairs. That's where you could go and get, you know, just if you had forgotten something at home, you know, they sold all kinds of things that a drugstore would have, except of course not prescription drugs. This was the little soda fountain that they had in there. And I loved to go in there after school and get some ice cream. And sometimes I'd go to my dad's office because he kept Coca-Cola in his refrigerator, and I'd make myself Coke float. But that was another one of my favorite places in the hotel to go hang out, because they had really wonderful ice cream and milkshakes. This was the balcony, that I had told you about, that where my dad had his picture made with the Beverly Hillbillies. That was the owner's apartment when she was alive, when Mrs. Mandy was alive. And that was the balcony they built for her. This was the inside part of that apartment. This was, again, the day that it was closing, but this was where my parents lived, and that's where I would stay in the summers when I would come home from college, and of course on any breaks that I would have. But you can see that really pretty wood. It was a very interesting apartment. This was, see that old timey TV? The hotel closed in 2006, and I don't know, I guess that's what they still had up there at the time. It had a little bitty kitchen, right, kind of a little galley kitchen. And like I said, my mother really never had to cook much because they ate all their meals there in the hotel. So, we could have cereal and things like that in the morning, but she didn't obviously do a lot of cooking out there. So those of you that have been in the Majestic, or got to go in the Majestic before it was torn down, probably saw this beautiful, beautiful chandelier. And I just loved going and sitting in that lobby and looking up at that and thinking of all the people who had walked by it or walked under it. Because we did have quite a number of quote, famous people and celebrities that stayed there. I mentioned the Dutch treat a while ago. If you've lived in Hot Springs very long at all, you may have heard or seen the Dutch treat. It was the original restaurant that was there that later became Grady's Grill. But that was the Dutch treat, was where I hung out probably the most. That's where I would get my cheeseburger and my French fries. And they also had ice cream, I found out. And it was really a cute place. They had the little red and white checkered tablecloths. And my mother was a really good Baptist Sunday school teacher. The Dutch treat, she was not her favorite place because it had a bar and people were there drinking sometimes. So, but this, you can also see the north lobby here in this picture, and that was where a portion of it, that was where George Gray and his orchestra would play. This is going back to the dining room. That was what it looked like when it closed. It had the white tablecloths. It was very fancy, very pretty. And you can see the beautiful lighting that was in there as well. We were in a restaurant the other day, and people were, most restaurants today, you come in, they go in and out of the kitchen in one door, or one doorway. Well, at the Majestic, there was one way in the kitchen, and then when they were bringing their food out, they did not have to worry about running into anybody because there was only one way out. So the waiter would come and take our order. Then, of course, he or she would go back, into the kitchen, place the order, and then when it was ready, they would come out. But it was a very elegant. You can see the architecture. If you didn't ever have a chance to go in the Majestic, it was absolutely beautiful. Yeah. Now I know I'm a little bit prejudiced. I get that, but I just thought it was a sight to see. Hang on just a minute. Let me get back to. Okay. All right. This again was the chandelier that was in the lobby. You can see the entrance into the hotel there. And then that was when we would come in, when I would come in from the pool area, this was basically what I would walk into. Now, when I was growing up there, they had couches there and underneath that chandelier, and people would be sitting there and visiting. Because back in those days, people, we didn't all have cell phones. And people would actually go down to the lobby, and there was another lobby just to the right. And they would be sitting in there visiting. And they would be meeting people from other areas and I, that's kind of a lost art these days. Now, you go somewhere to a hotel and what's everybody doing? They've got their phone. And I'm guilty as well. But we've all got our phones and we're looking at our phones and we're not looking up to see and meet people anymore. So, I wanted to share with you, there was a picture I tried my best to download. How many of you remember Jane Russell? Anybody remember a Jane Russell? Well, I have an autographed picture of her too, but I could not I tried to scan it and download it, and I don't know, maybe she does not want to be shown today. Maybe they snuck into my computer and said, Jane doesn't want to be in that program, but she stayed at the Majestic, and Phyllis Diller stayed there. Do you remember, anybody remember Tiny Tim?
No.
He stayed there. We just had a large number of the people that were performing at the Baker's. Patty Page, she stayed there. I got to go hear her, see her show. I remember I was really excited about that. There's a long list, and I'm not going to bore you with all of those. But I wanted to talk just a little bit about the four to me, very distinct buildings. The yellow brick building, which was the one that burned in, I think it was February of 2014, was the original Majestic. That was the one that you see in the Historical Society. That's the one they showed where Babe Ruth and all of them stayed. And that was built, I want to say late 1800s, early 1900s. And it was the one where the north lobby was. That was where the Dutch treat was. It had, if you went up to the second floor, there was a beauty shop, and that was where the bathhouse was. And there was also, it's called the Mayfair room, like a meeting room was up there. There was also a TV room. And I always try to explain this. When I would walk by there when I was, why are they over there watching TV? Well, not all the rooms in that original building had TVs. They were very inexpensive. Some of those rooms, in fact, quite a few of those rooms, only had a sink and a toilet. There was no bathtub. There was no shower. And the reason is, when that building was built, people were coming to Hot Springs for the baths. And it was a waste of money for them to put a bathroom in a room that people were just going to sleep in. They were going to sleep and they needed to be, be able to go to the restroom and wash their hands. But the builders at the time said, we're not going to put a bathtub or a shower in that room because they're going to be going to the bathhouse to take their baths. And it was very common to walk into that building and walk through. My friends loved to go running all through the halls of the Majestic, except I got in trouble if I ran, so, of course. So we would walk the halls of the Majestic. And they thought that was so interesting to see people walking down the hall in their bathrobes. But that was just very common. That's what they would do. They would get up and they would put their bathrobe on and they would go down to the bathhouse and they would get their bath and massage, and then they would go back to their room, and they would be so relaxed they would take a nap. And so some of those rooms also did not have televisions in them. And I think they only cost way back when. I think they only cost like maybe $2 or $3 a night to stay there. So they would go, and there was one, it was a fairly large TV, but they would go down to the TV room. And again, they would watch TV together. The people that didn't have televisions, they'd go down there and they would find a show they all wanted to watch. Of course, back then we only had how many channels? Three. So they didn't have to fuss over what to watch. They would sit and watch TV together and visit and have a good time. And it was a great kind of a social event for them. But that building, the original building, and that's what we were told to call it. My oldest brother, Roger, said when they moved to Hot Springs, my dad had been in the Continental in Kansas City, that the employees there were calling it, oh, that's the old building. And my dad said, it just doesn't sound good. He said, it is the original Majestic, and that's what we're going to call it. It is the original building. So, when I was working there, when I was in high school, I would, work at the front desk sometimes. And in college, I worked there. And when all the other hotels, we didn't have as many hotels in Hot Springs back then, when all the other hotels would fill up and there were no rooms left anywhere, the people would come in and they'd say, I can't find a room anywhere. They didn't make a reservation. Now, I gotta tell you, when my family went on vacation, we always have a reservation. That's from having a dad as a hotel manager. But they would come in and they'd say, I can't find a room anywhere else in town. We'd say, well, we've got some rooms, but we gotta tell you, there's a bed and a lavatory and a toilet, and there's no shower, or you don't have a shower or a bathtub. We would have to go through the whole explanation again. But it was amazing. A lot of those people would go ahead and take that room. Of course, they didn't have a choice if there were no other rooms in town. And then the next morning, they would go to the bathhouse there at the Majestic, which was a really nice bathhouse. And they would have their bath and massage. And I heard it over and over. The next morning, they would come down and they would tell the cashier, you know, I'm really glad that you all did not have a room with a bathtub, because I went and took the bath and massage and I would have never done that. And I enjoyed it so much. So that was the original building. Then there was the Red Annex building, and it was the one that had some apartments in it. And, there were wonderful, like regular rooms in there, but there were some apartments where some of the, and mostly it was older ladies that would live there. I kind of tend to think of it, it was the original assisted living, thank you, the original assisted living. Because they would live in those apartments, and then they would participate in all the social activities. And, of course, they could eat downstairs. They would all have a little kitchenette. But since, like I said, it was mostly older women that lived in those, I would have lots and lots of little grandmas looking after me all the time. And they would love for me to come and sit with them and, maybe play a card game with them, or dominoes or something like that. Or they, like with the kitchenette, they could make some cookies. They would make me cookies and, ask me to come in and visit, because, they were looking for the company. So I kind of would make the rounds sometimes, and it was really fun. But they did have apartments in that building. And then, of course, the Lanai Suites, those were the ones that went around the pool. When Mrs. Manning was living there, my dad, they did not have a pool. And the story goes, this is what I was told anyway, that Mrs. Manning did not want it. He said, we've got to compete with all these new Holiday Inns that are coming along, and they've got pools, and we need a pool. Well, where would you build it? And he showed her exactly where it would go. She said, you're not going to build a pool there. That's my favorite oak tree. So, anyway, she passed away. And yes, it was. The oak tree was cut down and they built the pool. So, and I sure am glad, because it sure made a difference when you grew up there that they had that nice pool. So, but they did build the Lanai Suites, and there were some regular rooms there. Families really loved the Lanai Suites because it was around the pool. And when my first job was babysitting, and there were lots of families, of course, that would come to the hotel. And if mom and dad wanted to go out for dinner and wanted somebody to watch the kids, they would just call me, and they would the front desk would give them my name. And of course, I could take care of the kids. But if it was summertime, we would spend a lot of time at the pool. And I was a trained lifeguard, so that was okay too. I could take care of them. But the families, like I said, really, really loved the Lanai Suites because of the proximity to the pool. And then the last building that was built was the Lanai Towers. That was if you were driving down Central Avenue, that was the big building that you saw. And I want to say maybe it was the last one to be torn down. And there was a penthouse at the top. I've got some pictures of that too, but I wasn't quite sure how many pictures you all want to see today. But it had a penthouse at the top, and that was, where if you got a lot of money, you could stay there. That we would go and watch the Christmas parade from one of the rooms in Lanai Towers, and it was great because the Christmas parade would come right down Central Avenue. There was another time I noticed I had a lot of friends. I would have, they would say, "When are you going to watch the Christmas parade?" I said, "Well, of course we're going to watch it from Lanai Towers." "Oh, how much room is there on that balcony?" So, they would come and watch it with me. I wanted to close with a letter. This is something else I tried to scan, but I wasn't very successful. So, but I thought this was, and I'm going to have any of you old enough for reading glasses, I had finally gotten it. I'm going to explain just one thing real quickly. In the original building, right to the side of right by the hallway that went up to the red brick building, was a little office, and it was called the publicity office. And I worked in there as well. I started with the switchboard, and then I moved to the publicity office, and then I moved to the front desk. But back then, I grew up in the 60s and 70s there at the Majestic. Back then, if you made a reservation, it's not like today where you get a text message and it says, your reservation is confirmed. Back then, you got a letter, and it was typed with your name on it. I mean, it was, I guess you could call it kind of a form letter, but each person, we typed every single letter for every single confirmation. And so, I really don't know why my dad had kept this one, but anyway, I can get a little light. So I can read this a little bit easier. But this was to a lady in Little Rock, and I just thought it was so well written. I did not write it. I'm looking at the initials. I'm not sure who did, but there were several others in that publicity office, and this would have been a typical letter at the time. And of course, it's got her name or her address and her name. And so this is what they said. Of course, it's with my dad's signature. One of the most important and exciting times in your life is rapidly approaching. Your honeymoon. We at the Majestic realize the importance of this event and know it is the time when a couple such as you and your fiance deserve the best of everything. And that's exactly what we have in mind for you. Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas has a very romantic setting with its promenade, world-famous Bathhouse Row, unique mountain and lake drives, and the scenic beauty of the surrounding area is unsurpassed. It offers all of this, plus many other attractions. The Majestic atmosphere is always one of friendly informality and relaxation. Our social director arranges special entertainment each evening, consisting of dancing, bingo parties, musicals, movies, etc. The highlight of the week's entertainment is a barbecue buffet dinner at our Majestic Lodge on picturesque Lake Hamilton. We would be pleased to offer you a special honeymoon rate of only $13 per day. On our choice accommodations in our beautiful Lanai Suites edition around the pool, or our new Lanai Towers edition. We are enclosing a self-addressed postpaid reservation card and look forward to hearing from you as to the dates we may be of service. Now, evidently, they had not made their final reservation.
What year was that?
1969. So, and one thing I forgot to mention was I did get to Mrs. Morgan, Louise Morgan, that would do the bingo, did all the social activities. She would let me get, on the old bingo machines, they would go, and then one of they would roll out, and then I would get one of those and hand to her. You know, and she would call it out, but I felt so special. I participated to do that. Yeah, 1969, you could have stayed at the Majestic for your honeymoon for $13 a night. So to me, that letter just pretty much exemplified what the Majestic was. It was a very welcoming, very hospitable place. You know, we made everybody, you had to be friendly or you didn't work there. And I was a very shy little girl back then. But, you know, I had to come out of my shell to talk to all those guests. And it, you know, it was really a great learning experience for me too. So, you know, I'm so sorry that it's not there anymore. It makes me very sad to walk by there or to drive by there and see just all that empty space. But I appreciate you letting me come.
Wasn't that great? Do we have any questions?
Yes,
Nick,
yeah, yes, sir.
my wife opened a dress shop, Lanya,
Yes.
in the Majestic, and she has terrific memories. I thought it was just the coolest place to go to. It broke her heart when the change came, but she very much wanted to be here today.
Well, that was in the North Lobby. I know exactly where that was. Before she had that shop, there had been something they're called the knitting nook. And that's where I learned how to knit and crochet and needlepoint and all of that. So that was, but yes, everybody loved going and shopping I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the name of it.
Lanya,
Yeah, there you go.
she's still in business 34 years
Yes,
today.
yes, I had heard a lot about it.
I'm not sure, did you say that the lady that took the pictures from Arlington, that was when Horace Fisher was there?
Yes,
Well, Horace and Linda live in Village.
that's true. They sure did. And he could probably tell me.
Yeah.
I run into them every once in a while, and I don't think about that at the time. We're talking about village things. Yes,
Was her name Lynn Cole?
I don't think so. I know Lynn Cole, and I don't think that's who it was, but it could be. But, it was I will tell you, it was somebody that was working in the horse office and let's see, Gary passed away in 2012. So it would have been in 2012 that she would have been working there in the office. So I don't know. Yes. What are you asking a question for? You can ask me later.
I'm famous. Married to Lisa Goodwin. When the hotel caught on fire, Lisa was teaching the event. And I called her and I said, Lisa, it's safe. The hotel is on fire, big time, and it's on TV. So she came in and sat down and started pointing at different things. When I snuck to the back and called Channel 7, I'm actually and Little Rock, and I said, my wife was raised in the hotel, and it's breaking her heart sitting here, watching it burn, and I thought y'all might be interested in talking to her. Well, the next day, we had the news bureau set up in our living room.
Yes.
I'm not sure, you might want to check with Chris Ricks, I think your chandelier is hanging in his theater.
Where, hanging where?
Chris Ricks.
And Chris Central
Central
Theater.
Chris. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Majestic was my first job also. I was a dishwasher. I lied about my age so I could, told them I was 16, so I think I worked there about a week.
He brought too many plates.
Steve Skiller, Michelle Rector, Linda Cross, and I snuck in the pool.
You weren't the only one.
And we were playing leapfrog in the shallow end. And I think I was in the 9th grade, I believe. All of us were. And I got distracted or something, hit my teeth, and lost 2 teeth in the pool. But nowadays, you know, somebody would sue and all that. Security should have kept us out and all that, you know.
Well, I'm sorry about your teeth.
We've got a few from online viewers. First couple are shout outs. One's from Patty Smith, who's the granddaughter of Kate Medina, says hello.
Yes, I have a picture of it. Yes.
And then one from Mark P, who says, Lisa, I've been in your old home as a friend of one of your brothers. I'm 80 now, so I don't know if we met, but I do remember meeting your dad and mom. And then we've got a question from Jessamine, who says, in the picture of the reindeer you shared, she wanted to ask if those are the same reindeer that the Arlington uses now, because they look identical.
They probably are, because the Arlington and the Majestic were owned by by Southwest Hotels, so probably so. Yes.
I had a question, you may have just answered it. I wondered if the hotel was owned by a large corporation or if local money went together to finance.
It was owned by Southwest Hotels. There was Brady Manning was the founder of Southwest Hotels, and they had 2 hotels in Hot Springs, the Arlington and the Majestic. And that's one of my dad's favorite sayings was that Arlington may be the biggest, but the Majestic is the best. And then there were 4 hotels in Little Rock. They had the Marion, Brady Manning, the Lafayette, and the Albert Pike in Little Rock. And then they had a hotel in Memphis called the William Lynn, and then one in Kansas City, the Continental. So it was an old corporation that was founded, gosh, I wouldn't say in the 20s, 30s maybe.
So it wasn't local investors.
It was the Scott family, the Manning family, and then Joy Manning married Warren Scott. And so it was pretty much the Scott family after that. That was the owner of Southwest Hotels. And so,
For the Majestic Lodge,
I'm sorry, what?
Majestic Lodge, is it still there?
No, I think it's I think it was either burned or, yes, they burned, I think.
The Majestic burned several years ago.
Yeah, the lodge, that's what I thought, and I think that happened maybe while we were living out of state, so. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
To hear about the bonds. Meeting is adjourned. Paul, thank you so much. We appreciate the library allowing us to come here every month. Thank you. Thank you all.